translation. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the self-effulgent super-soul who is the witness in everyone's heart, who enlightens the individual soul and who cannot be reached by the exercises of the mind, words, or consciousness. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, cannot be understood by the individual soul through mental, physical, or intellectual exercises. It is by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the individual soul is enlightened. Therefore, the Lord is described here as Atma Pradipa. The Lord is like the sun, which illuminates everything and cannot be illuminated by anyone. Therefore, if one is serious about understanding the Supreme, one must receive enlightenment from him, as instructed in Bhagavad Gita. One cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by one's mental, physical, or intellectual powers. Om Gyanati Mirandasya Gananjanan Shalakaya Chakshuruntam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langeti Grimya Kripa Taraham Vande Shri Guram Dinataniram Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravana Pachanare Nivaseshan Yuvanipasajao Deshatanire Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasundarbhaya Vachapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sati Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'll do my best then with my meagre stock of realizations to say something about this transcendental information, what we are being presented with. This is very interesting, actually. I thought this is quite difficult because it's being mentioned here that actually we cannot understand Krishna by our consciousness. I thought we were supposed to become Krishna conscious. Cannot understand him by physical or mental exercises. Of course, physical exercises is pretty obvious, isn't it? You know, you're not going to understand Krishna by going down the gym trying to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. And even it's quite common for popular gurus, isn't it, to promote, you know, all the sort of New Age pseudo-type sort of pseudo-spiritual activities in order to become peaceful and self-realized. And although these things, I'm sure, have some form of benefit to some part of the body at some particular time, the reality is that one cannot achieve the transcendental platform by waking up and pressing your nose for 15 minutes in the morning. There's absolutely no question of understanding the spiritual realm by these mechanical processes. And of course, mental processes means speculation, isn't it? Could be like this, could be like that, it might be like this. It could be, but it might not be. Physical or intellectual exercises. It is by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here then, Srila Prabhupada seems to suggest that, practically speaking, we're all, Kripa Siddhi, right? Kripa Siddhi means by the benediction of the Lord. Of course, we are using all these things in Krishna's service. It's kind of like sometimes we hear that, or we hear all the time, that our senses are imperfect and that actually there is no question of us trying to figure it out. I mean, most of us, we can't even understand what's going on the other side of the fence on the property here. What to speak of what's going on the other side of the universe. For our tiny, weeny little conditioned brains, it's going to be very, very difficult. The idea is it's revealed. This is where, in religious paths and teachings and so forth, you get the idea of revelation. Is that revelation means something that's been revealed. Just like it's mentioned that we're all in darkness. Ignorance is compared to darkness, isn't it? And the idea is when the light comes on, only then can you see. And the idea is Krishna is compared to the sun, and only he can actually switch the light on. There's analogy of the cinema, isn't it? The comparison to darkness, the analogy of the cinema is given. If you go to the cinema, and the idea is we want to become absorbed in some sort of phantasmagoria, lose ourselves for a short time. Then, before you can enjoy the show, what has to happen? The lights have to go off, isn't it? So it's the same with the material show. You can only kind of really get into it and enjoy it and try and engage in it when the lights are off. And the lights are on, it spoils it, isn't it? So therefore, materialistic people, better to keep the lights off, because if you put the lights on, then it just kind of disturbs the whole show, you see. And we've seen, isn't it, when in preaching and book distribution activities and so forth, some people, they get very, very upset when we try and switch the lights on. But that's really our business, isn't it? On behalf of Krishna, our business is really to go around and to try to switch the lights on, keep people out of the darkness, isn't it? Prahlad Maharaj, he compares the material world to be a dark well, isn't it? Not only is it dark, it's also really, really difficult to get out, right? If you just become conscious one day in some really deep, dark well, I mean, you don't know what's going on. How the hell, where are you? How the hell do you get out? Right? You can't get out here. According to Srila Prabhupada and the Lord, by one's physical, mental or intellectual powers. But we understood, isn't it, that if one studies these books, particularly Bhagavad Gita, as has been mentioned here, that are we not worshipping Krishna with our intelligence, with our buddhi? Is that not using our intellectual powers? The senses being imperfect, the point is, although the senses are imperfect, and they're even more imperfect when you're in the dark, of course, but the idea is, if I said to you, for example, my name is Aniruddha, that's a fact. But the point is, although the senses are imperfect, you have received a piece of valid information. So it's not that the senses are actually incapable of receiving correct information. The real point that's being made here is that, of course, you have to receive it from the correct source. And as being pointed out here, the correct source for receiving this enlightenment is the Bhagavad Gita. And what's so special, what's particularly, out of all the religious texts, not only for the devotees, but also for the world, what is particular about the Bhagavad Gita is the fact that it was actually spoken by Krishna himself. This is what makes the Bhagavad Gita the supreme transcendental body of knowledge, that it was actually spoken, actually given by Lord Shri Krishna himself for the upliftment of human society. Of course, there are many commentaries and so many books and yogas and speculations and this and that, but this book, spoken by Lord Krishna himself. And of course, if we study and chant and read this book, then, of course, according to our own level of understanding, enlightenment and situation, eventually we can also receive the same benediction, the same enlightenment as Arjuna did. Arjuna was enlightened. How long did it take to speak the Bhagavad Gita? 45 minutes or something? I've been here 20 years and still there's no giving in the end. So Arjuna was obviously not an ordinary person. He was obviously very, very qualified. But of course, what is our qualification? Narottam Das Thakur, isn't he? The idea is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the perfect enactor and speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, what did he say? He comes to save the Narottam Das said that the Lord is Patita Pavan, and that he's come to save the most fallen. So Narottam Das is in that wonderful bhajan is very clever, very intelligent. He's saying, well, Lord, if you've come to save the most fallen, then I am amongst the most fallen, so therefore I must be first on the list, right? He's clever. He's searching out ways to receive the mercy. So in other words, you don't need much qualification. You just have to, I guess, be desirous of the mercy. And here, of course, we understand that, we're endeavoring to use all these faculties in Krishna's service, isn't it? If everything depends on Krishna's service, for example, and it's all to do with Krishna's mercy, and Krishna's very merciful, why can't why do I have to get up at 4 o'clock to get the mercy? Why can't I get up, Krishna's merciful, why can't I get up at 8 o'clock and get the mercy, right? Why 16 rounds? Why, if we just depend on Krishna's mercy? The point is, all these regulated activities called sadhana. Sadhana bhakti means what we're practicing, isn't it? Chanting, reading, taking prasadam. All these things we're meant to be doing every day, these regulated spiritual activities. The real purpose is that actually all these things, they put us in the position to receive Krishna's mercy. That's what sadhana really is and does. By the practice of sadhana, it actually puts us in the position to receive this enlightenment. And what does Krishna say? As they surrender unto me, I do what? I reciprocate accordingly. And of course we know good sadhana means avoiding the offences, actually. In the Harinam Chintamani, you will find there that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes into considerable detail about these offences, particularly nama parads. But not only, it's not just about the negative aspect, about not doing it. What Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur offers is a series or a set of activities which, if followed, actually makes committing the offences impossible. So that's the idea. We have a set of positive activities rather than just trying to avoid offending people. We should concentrate on maybe doing something for someone. That type of thing. Cynicism is very bad, actually. Being cynical about everything and everyone. Of course, we're not perfect. People are not perfect. We're not living in a perfect world as such. But we should be trying to cultivate this mood of thankfulness, as in being grateful rather than cynical. That's what opens the doors to the mercy, actually. Being grateful. All the blessings come from gratitude. Cynicism and offences just closes the door, really. Just closes the door on all the wonderful blessings that we can be recipient of by following this process of Krishna consciousness. So enlightenment is our real business. The idea is, by studying the Bhagavad Gita, which is the most potent instruction, the most potent association, then the idea is that eventually all our material ideas, activities, and everything else has to become non-essential. Of course, this is generally the difficult part, and generally the part that sometimes we don't like. Krishna says, isn't it, that gratefulness. What does Krishna say in the Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter? Bahunam janmanam ante, isn't it? Jnanavamman prapadyanti. Vasudeva savarmati sarmahatma sudulavaha. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that it's after quite a few births that the Mahatma gets this opportunity to actually surrender unto Krishna. So we have to make a very clear distinction in our own mind and life, that are we actually surrendering unto Krishna, or are we simply, speaking for myself, surrendering to the things that we think Krishna is going to give or do for us? I mean, it's like Srila Prabhupada said, you can have all the material facilities. Krishna can give you everything. You can have, so much material opulence, but that doesn't mean you're liberated. Just because you've got a fat bank balance and a big house and a fancy car and all the material trappings, it doesn't mean, and even if Krishna gives it to you, it doesn't mean you're liberated. Because Krishna can very easily give you, he gave Dhruva Maharaj, his own planet even, right? So if you're going to ask large, because Krishna is God. But the more intelligent people, they're not interested in hanging around in the material world. And this is a very good question to ask, isn't it? If by some inconceivable stroke of good fortune that the Lord appeared before us and says, okay, let's go. I'm going to take you back to the Vaikuntha right now. Would you be ready? Would we be in ecstasy? Or would we be in anxiety? Because if you've got all the material stuff, it's going to be difficult, isn't it? Well, I got a really nice situation here. Could you just wait till I'm old? Just so I can finish off, enjoying the last bits, after all you gave it to me. Right? Oh, my kids are still at school. My daughter's pregnant. Right? What's going to happen to my wife? What's going to happen to my cat? Right? I know it sounds weird, but what would we do? Would we be in ecstasy or would we be in anxiety? If the Lord... Because at the end of the day, Krishna says, time I am destroyed of the worlds, doesn't he? So at some time, at some point in life, he's going to be appearing you in some form, right? Usually at the time of death. He appears. And we should not think that it's going to be any... If we're not ready now, then what makes us think we're going to be ready then? Right? Krishna may appear before you in person, so to speak. He may appear before you as death due to the insurmountable force of time. But either way, we're going to be ready. We speak to many people, and they seem to have this idea that, I'll just sort of breeze through, and then when I die, Krishna will take me back to Godhead. It's like I'm coming ready or not, but it's not up to us. It's up to him, right? He's the one who decides ultimately. Of course, he wants us all to go. He wants us all to... So this is the big question, isn't it? Is it mentioned in the Bhagavatam, isn't it? About leaving the world. Because at the end of the day, Srila Prabhupada said our mission in life is to go back to Godhead. And you generally can't go back to somewhere you've never been. So the point being that if we made a conscious decision, assuming we did, Krishna didn't send us here, we chose to come here, right? We decided that we're going to live and try and enjoy life separately from God, and here we are. And the point is, we might not remember or recall it now, but at some point in our eternal history, we made a conscious decision to do that and come here. So the point is, if we want to go back, then you have to make a conscious decision to go back, isn't it? It's unlikely it's going to happen by accident, isn't it? Sometimes I was given a class at one of the Namahat groups. Well, calling it a class was generous, but and this question anyway, it came up, it often comes up, it's mentioned that should we desire to go back to Godhead? Because the pure devotees, they don't desire to go back to Godhead. Big question for a lot of people. Comes up quite a lot. So, I know I've given this example before and it's really gross, but anyway. I used to train in a gym many years ago, and we used to train bodybuilders. And of course, all the men want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Hulk Hogan, whoever he is now. That's the thing with the body, you can change it, isn't it? It's a good thing about the body, you can change it, it's changed all the time. There's a whole debate about karma going on. I forget what I was hearing. I think it was on the television or the radio or some useless place. People, the point of reincarnation and karma is extremely simple. It's very, very, again, in the Bhagavad Gita, it's all explained right in the beginning, isn't it? Karma, meditation. Oh, I don't believe in karma, but one reaps that which one sows, isn't it? It's as simple as that. If, for example, you're telling your children to work hard at school, get good grades, get a good education, because you will understand that at some point in their life it will affect their future, for example, then you are acting in accordance to the law of karma. We live in a world that is strictly governed by law. And the law of karma is sometimes known as the iron law of human destiny. It is the law of all laws, cause and effect. It's not very difficult to figure out. But what we mean in the spiritual sense, we're just extending it based on the eternality of the self. Not just for this life, but previous and future lives. And of course the concept of reincarnation. It just means that the consciousness is moving into different physical situations. Krishna explains right in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. This is what this Prabhupada's mentioned here. One must be illuminated by the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. This book is so important. Shiva Ram Swami once gave a very good methodology. He said we should study the Bhagavad Gita and read the Srimad Bhagavatam. Unless, of course, you're a great student and scholar, but many people living busy lives with time constraints don't, unfortunately, have the ability to sit down and study for 8 hours every day. The Bhagavad Gita should be constantly studied, absorbed. Prabhupada said you could read it 1,000 times and you can still get newer and newer insights. And let's explain Dehenosmin yata dehi komaram yovanamjaram, isn't it? Komaram is an age bracket, I think, between the ages of 0 and 5 years. Krishna Kumara means is little. So he's saying, isn't it, that in this life we have different types of bodies. But the consciousness is the same. Say if I wasn't familiar with you or you wasn't familiar with someone, and you went to the house and you saw a picture of a baby on the wall and you said, who's that? And it was that person. They wouldn't say, well, it's the next door neighbour. They'd say, that's me. Although the body, they look totally, completely different. It just means that their consciousness is now in a different physical situation. So it simply means that when you die, Krishna says, doesn't he, in the same verse, because the soul doesn't die, just like in this life you're passing into different physical situations. When you die, according to, your activities, you will also receive a different physical situation. But for the devotees, we don't want another physical situation. Questions asked, should we desire to go back to the Godhead? So, these people who want to change their bodies, in this establishment they would say, well, we want to work like the professionals. We want to do like the professional trainers do. But the question is, of course, are you a professional? And the answer is no, you're not. So yes, someone might say, well, pure devotees don't desire to go back to Godhead. Should we desire to go back to Godhead? Well, the question is, are you a pure devotee? Right? Probably not. You might be, I don't know. But if you was, you probably wouldn't be asking, would you? Right? Unless you're just being really, so should we desire it's like sometimes people argue, you should only listen to the pure devotees, only get information from them. Well, are you a pure devotee? No. So then why should we listen to you? You have to listen to the pure devotees. You're not a pure devotee. Why should we listen to you? My aspiration, well, what I find is the most inspiring definition. You know, sometimes you read in the books, you're listening to the lectures. There's always those certain things that stay with you, you know. That's the whole idea, you know, at least for myself. Being a bit dense. Hopefully something will stick in the heart, the mind. Prabhupada said that a pure devotee, my favourite definition, Prabhupada said a pure devotee is someone who has no other desires apart from practicing Krishna consciousness and going back to Godhead. So should we desire to go? I believe we should. I mean, after all, there's infinitely worse things you could be desiring right now, right? To say the least, yeah? There's no harm. I mean, that's why Prabhupada came here, isn't it? You know, what he spent so many years toiling and writing these books. No, I don't want to go back to God as I'm a pure devotee. What the, you know, it's like, I mean, that's kind of an advance. When you get to that level, then maybe it will come as a natural. But at least for most people, we should. That's why Prabhupada came, isn't it? To get us out of here, out of the material world. And again in the Bhagavad Gita, actually Prabhupada was giving this lecture, it was in London actually, I don't know, it was at the Manor, it might have been at the Manor, or Conway Hall. And he's talking about real, true meditation. Because obviously, again here, it's saying, Srila Prabhupada saying, it's not by intellectual powers and physical exercises and, you know, trying to do some conscious tricks and mental tricks. Prabhupada clears the way. What is real meditation? Prabhupada said that real meditation means to constantly remember and meditate on the fact that you're not the body, that you are an internal soul. That's what real meditation is. And that's what we should remember as soon as we wake up in the morning. Because if you forget that, then, you know, it's kind of difficult, isn't it? That's the whole point. If we always remember that we're an eternal soul, and that this physical body and all its trappings and entanglements and sources of darkness and illusion and bondage, it's not who we are, what we're meant to be doing, then everything comes from this, isn't it? If we understand that I'm going to live forever, intelligent question would be, then if that's the case, then what am I going to do forever? Right? Next intelligent question. First intelligence, enlightened, and that's the thing actually. We have to develop an enlightened intellect, isn't it? In Krishna consciousness, to actually practice and understand Krishna consciousness and attain the supreme destination, the supreme goal, the supreme understanding. We have to develop this enlightened intellect, and we can't do it without studying the Bhagavad Gita. And Srila Prabhupada would often call the devotees students, isn't he? Because that's what we are. We're meant to be studying these books. Rather like it would be kind of foolish to go to university or college or whatever educational establishment one's in or chooses. And it's no good, is it, just saying, well, I'm here. You know, if you go to law school or medical school and you sit just behind the desk and say, well, at least I'm here, that's no good. Because if you don't study the law books, if you don't study the medicine books, then the chances of you becoming a lawyer or a doctor are, at best, extremely remote, isn't it? It's no good saying, well, at least I'm here. You're there. You're meant to do that. You're meant to be there for a reason, and that is to become educated. So, this is our program, as directed by Srila Prabhupada, is that we should engage in this by his mercy, engage in this process of sadhana, always meditate that we're an eternal soul, Krishna is the supreme eternal soul, and by studying Bhagavad Gita, and by following this process of sadhana, this reading, the chanting, the taking of prasadam, and then trying our very best, as I'm sure many of us are at this time of the year, to try and go out and to give the same to others. I was speaking to one very senior Mataji, disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And in a roundabout way, she said that when she was with Prabhupada many, many years ago in the temples, I think she'd been to many different places. She said then, there were only really two services. You were either looking after the deities or you were out preaching. See, it's our business. You're either doing something connected to taking care of the deity, or you were actually engaged in preaching. Preaching has a very heavy connotation, isn't it? Especially when you speak to the community. Let's go and preach today. And mostly you might as well ask them to jump off a roof or something. But preaching is not, doesn't mean you have to stand on a cardboard box or a wooden box in central London, in Hyde Park, or wherever it is. I mean, you can if you want, because you're giving the truth. And preaching simply means that we should help other people take part in the Krishna consciousness movement. It's that simple. Whether you're giving them prasadam, whether you're giving them books, whether you're trying to give them some good information, your realization. So this is a process, there's a system. Not by doing, as we said, some physical yogas, by putting your ankle around the back of your head and squeezing your nose for 15 minutes every morning. That is going to get you nowhere spiritually. Intellectual exercise is just trying to be clever for the sake of it. There is a process, there is a meditation. As taught in the Bhagavad Gita, meditate with an eternal soul. Meditate on Krishna as the super soul, the self-effulgent Supreme Personality of Godhead. Receive His mercy by engaging in this sadhana. And then simultaneously, whenever we do get the opportunity, try to go out and give this same information and opportunity to other people. As that is why Srila Prabhupada has come. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. And from what I can understand, although I'm not much of an example, to be very honest, if we do this, then our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, deities, the Lord, will become pleased with us, and they will bestow upon us more and more blessings in enlightenment. So, it's 8:30. Thank you all very much for your kind patience. If there's any comments or questions,